right, so I'm currently on the phone with Bryce. He's another musician that reached out about the current interview series. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
Well, hello, my name is Bryce. I'm a musician out of Denver, Colorado, and I am just currently working on all sorts of cool stuff with my band and my tour. Been playing for like 22 years as a guitarist, gigging for about 10 of those. I'm a sponsored artist now from a guitar company, and yeah, just kind of trying my best to move my career forward. So nice to be talking to you.
Awesome. Very cool. I'm sure we'll get into a bunch of that. But in the beginning, I always like to talk about the beginning. So give me some detail about when you kind of first encountered music. What was important about it to you that made you kind of want to, keep it in your life?
Sure. So really, I was introduced to music by my dad. He really loved Eric Clapton, and he had a whole bunch of the Eric Clapton box set CDs. And so, I kind of grew up around that. And then at one point, I found a guitar in the basement, and I was like, "Oh, this is kind of a neat thing." And so I just kind of started working on that, and really just kind of banging on it as a 6-year-old. And then my parents were like, "Well, he seems to like this. Let's get him an actual guitar." And then things just kind of spurred from there. And we had, there was a point when I was 8 years old that I was listening to an Eric Clapton record in my dad's truck on my way to a monster truck rally that he was taking me to that night. And it was One More Car, One More Rider was the album. And I was listening to the Layla track, and my ear was as close as I could get it to the speaker, all because I really, really wanted to know what was making that noise.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found out that, oh, that's a guitar. And then that is when I realized, like, oh yeah, this is ingrained in my soul now. I have no other option.
Sure. So once you kind of realized that about yourself, did you go out and, get a guitar from the garage sale, or, how did you go about getting your first instrument and then starting lessons?
Yeah, so what happened is, like I said, I found that guitar in the basement, and then my parents decided to get me one. Once I heard that record, that's when it was like, oh no. So that's when I really started going after it. And then my parents actually got me like my first real electric guitar kit thing when I was about 8, and that was kind of the beginning of it all. And I just started taking lessons. They put me into this place called Doghouse Music a few years later, and that was like a rock and roll camp. And that taught me so much about playing guitar and being with other musicians and playing in a live setting with other musicians. It was an invaluable experience. So that's kind of how that really got started.
So you mentioned like a beginner guitar kit. Is that like your traditional kind of mock Stratocaster with a little shitty amp that it comes with kind of thing?
Yes, that's exactly what it was. It's I actually still have that guitar. It's a just like a Squier Affinity Telecaster or a Stratocaster with the little 15-watt Fender Frontman, 15G or whatever they're called, and a cable and a gig bag, and that was what got it all started.
Nice.
And now I have like 15, and it's impossible to stop.
Yeah, once you get started with guitars, it's a very difficult hobby to put down.
Addiction worse than heroin.
Well, they do say that if you want to keep your kids off drugs, either get them into computers or instruments. All right. So you mentioned that obviously you started doing lessons and then playing guitar. How did you kind of start branching off into the creative component of it? Once you kind of had the technical skill down, did you start writing lyrics and then putting guitar to that, or just coming up with melodies? Give me some information about that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So once I got that first guitar, it was kind of all about, let's learn, the stuff, the technical stuff, like you said. And then I kind of just started, once I got into that Doghouse Music camp, that is really when it was like, so you're going to come in and you're going to write a song with other individuals, with like 4 or 5 other kids. And then at the end of the week on a Friday, you're going to have a show at our little rock and roll camp. And it was just inside of a studio. And so they had this really nice studio. And we got to play a little show for everyone on the song that we wrote. And so that is kind of what got me started on just like learning how to write a song. And so
Okay.
then moving forward on my own stuff, it usually just started with like I would come up with a cool riff, and then I would be like, oh, that that's cool, and then I would try to write the song musically, and then come up with lyrics on top of it.
Okay, so it very much was the organic. You wrote something on guitar, then tried to put lyrics and stuff to that.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
exactly,
And then,
exactly.
so when you kind of envisioned the way that your career would go and move along, do you see yourself kind of as like a solo songwriter, or are you fronting a band, or do you participate in other bands? Give me some information about that.
Yeah, so when I kind of started doing it, I was like, "Oh, I'm going to be the world's greatest guitar player," and I had no other like. And now I have a lot better of an idea, and so like I do all sorts of stuff. I teach lessons, I play with other bands as hired gun work, but my main project is my band, and that is just started touring recently. And so yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, so with your band, are you fronting it? Like you're writing all the material and bringing other people in, other musicians to fill in the parts?
Yeah, I mean that's generally the idea. I try not to change members, but I've had bad luck with that recently. I just been kind of leveling up my circle and trying to
Mm-hmm.
get with better musicians to better myself
Mm-hmm.
and better my songs, and it's always paying off. Like every time I do that, it pays off. But yeah, I come up with most of the material for my stuff. A lot of the stuff that's currently on Spotify, all of that is, except for 3 songs, has been written, tracked, mixed, mastered, and sent out into the world by me. I didn't have any help, which could be good, could be bad.
Sure, definitely. So, give me some information about the band. If it is it like your name plus some other members kind of thing, or that.
Yeah, so the band's called Bryce Evans and the Black Cats, and I created that band out of necessity, really, for a couple different things. One was corporate event gigs because I was starting to play a lot of high paying shows for like business meetings or conferences or weddings or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part was to just play the music that I had written and released on Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, if I call it just Bryce Evans, then it'll just be me, and kind of the thing right now is
Mm-hmm.
kind of working out for artists. So I was like, well, I'll do like a and the something, and then me and my wife ended up coming up with the and the Black Cats, and
Sure.
then that way I can change out the artists that are playing those parts as I need,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have to change the name every time, so it
Sure.
works out for branding.
Yeah, that works. And then, give me the story about the sponsorship. At what point did that come along and enter into the scenario?
Sure, of course. So that was beginning of spring in 2021, right around, well, I want to say end of spring, actually, right around my birthday, April of 21. I found this guitar company called Kanoni King Guitars out of Russia, and they were looking for artists. And so I thought, well, why not? Like worst they can say is no. So I put in my information. And at that point in time, I'd actually just gotten done with a mix by Kevin Shirley. I either got done with it or I was just about to start working on a mix with Kevin Shirley. And that particular producer has done things for Joe Bonamassa. He's his regular producer. He's worked with Journey. He's worked with Deep Purple. He's worked with Iron Maiden. There's so many other artists that Kevin Shirley has worked with that are huge, and so I had that kind of on the horizon, I think, or in my hand. And I just approached them and said, hey, this is kind of what I have going on in my career. And they were like, cool, we'll get back to you in a few weeks. And then they came back and they were like, yeah, we'd love to sponsor you. And that has been one of the best relationships I think I've ever had with a sponsor. They're a fantastic company. They help me out all the time with marketing and stuff like that.
Awesome. That's very cool. So, where do you kind of want to see yourself in, 5 or 10 years as your career progresses?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm really hoping within 10 years, I would like to say 5 years, but 10 years is a reasonable timeline to be at least playing Red Rocks in some capacity. So many great things have happened just this summer alone. We booked the Whiskey A Go Go in Los Angeles, which has housed so many amazing artists. So we got that. We got our first tour started within our first year of me doing this whole thing. And so far, it's been great. We just finished our first leg. And so I would hope that with enough of that work within 10 years, I will make the right connections, meet the right people, gain enough of a fan base, and then that would get me to that stage. So that's really the number one goal. The the name of the tour is the Road One Tour, and
Mhm.
that's because it's Road One of however many I need to take to get to Red Rocks, because all roads lead to Red Rocks, is my saying to myself.
Sure.
So I'm trying my damnedest.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable goal to set for yourself too. I can absolutely see that being accomplished for sure.
Oh, thank you.
Excellent. So with the breadth of time that you've been, working on music and playing an instrument and everything, what are your favorite memories that stand out to you that help keep you motivated?
Oh, sure. There's a few actually. I'll give you two. So one of them was just recently, and one of my friends here in Colorado. Shout out to Sarah Mount. She's a boss. If you don't know her music, go check her out. And she just played Red Rocks. Like last weekend, actually. And so, like, it's a huge win for the Denver music scene. It is so amazing to see somebody that's been working for like 12 years get to that venue, because it makes it attainable. And one of my favorite memories is I sent her a message on Facebook, and I'm like, this is awesome. Like, you're the one person that deserves this. This is great. And so she finally got back to me because she was so busy. She said, like, you're one of the only people that like I see doing this in this industry. And like, if you want to get Red Rocks, you're definitely on the right path. And just keep doing what you're doing and manifest it, and you'll get there. And that for me is like, holy crap. Like, somebody that's doing it, somebody that's been there or that is going there at that point, is telling me that I can do this, And so that, very, very recently, I just keep thinking back on that. Like, yeah, just keep going. Like, somebody who's there and does it really thinks highly of you, and you could probably get this done if you put your mind to it. So that's one. And then the other one is I got to meet one of my all-time favorite guitar heroes, Davey Knowles, at one of his shows. And I had started, like, his new album had dropped, and he announced that he was coming to Colorado. I bought tickets, and then I thought, I really love his stuff. I'm just going to post stuff on Instagram, and I'm going to like play along with his new songs, and I'm going to just tag him in it, And I wasn't thinking anything of it. I didn't think anything would happen from it. And so I get to the venue, and I get to the merch booth, and I asked the lady, I said, hey, are you taking cash or card? Because I think I only had card at that point. She was like, I don't know. I have to ask if you can come back in a little while. So when I went down to the stage, I could see the merch booth from where I was. And I watched the elevator open, and Davey Knowles came out, and he did his stuff. And I was like, I got to go back up there, And so I went up there, and I waited for him to finish. And he comes around the booth, and I was like, hey, Davey, like, are you Davey Knowles? And he was like, yeah. And his eyes got real, real big. And he goes, you're that guy. You're that guy on Instagram. You're, excuse the French, but you're effing amazing, right? And God, yeah, that it was one of those, like, I didn't even, like, I said his name, but I didn't introduce myself, and he recognized me first. And he was like, you're so amazing, like, you're really good, you really are. And I was like, oh, like, what? I've been listening to this guy since I was 16, like, that is a shock in the face that he knows who I am before I even said who I was. Like, that is insane. I've left enough of an impression on one of my heroes that he thinks highly of me, And so that one, I always think back to that, like, oh my God, like, you're doing something right, whatever that is that you're doing, keep doing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So along those lines, you mentioned that you're doing the TikTok videos. Where else can people find you? What are your social media links?
Oh, sure. So I have TikTok, which is at Bryce Evans Music. And then as far as Instagram goes, it's all kind of the same. Bryce Evans Music on Instagram. And then Facebook is the only one that's different. And that's Bryce Evans Music FB for Facebook, because I couldn't get Bryce Evans Music. So that's all those, as well as my website, which is bryceevansmusic.com. You can find out about show dates, merch, anything you really want to know about me, you can find out there.
Sure. And I always like to give the person I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out their last word. So a message you want to put out there that you feel you resonate with.
Yeah, just be nice to people and let everybody live their lives.